Katrina here from Scrappy Horses. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am so happy you're here today. This is a big project. It's been sitting in my Cricut Design Space for a couple of months, and I've been tweaking it ever so slightly, adding and subtracting and thinking about exactly what I wanted to do with this idea. I knew I wanted to use it for the Music Makes the World Go Round challenge over at Paper a la Mode. So I wasn't too sure I really wanted to bring in the world, but I did want to use the elements of round, and I wanted to use, obviously, music. So I started thinking about this idea on a card, and it just kept growing and growing, and I thought, this is too much for a card. So then I thought, okay, let's put it in an art journal. And then I thought, okay, by the time I get all of this into an art journal, it's going to get pretty thick. And then I saw a wonderful demo by Sandy Woodson on using fabric. And I decided, okay, this would be a fun place to incorporate some fabric. So that's when I decided, all right, we're going to make this into a framed project. So then I started having to think about, okay, let's size this so that it fits in a frame. And then I decided, you know what, I have an old gold frame that has no glass. If there's no glass, then there's no boundaries. It can stick out and over. It can do whatever it wants to do. So here's what I ended up with. Let's just go through the actual piece itself and explain it. And then as we go through, I'll tell you where everything came from. This outside piece right here represents the gold frame. So obviously we're not going to cut that. It just represents that gold frame. This piece back here represents the actual 5x7, all three of the layers of 5x7 cereal box. So what's happening is I've got these three layers, okay, of 5x7. And what I did is I came in and I covered it with this lace. And it's real lace. I just have this here so that you can see what I'm talking about. And I took that and I covered this piece of cereal box, which is 5x7. Okay. So then I took another piece of cereal box and I put it on the back. So there are going to be two pieces of cereal box glued together. The lace will go on top of that. Let's just bring it to the front so you can see what I'm talking about. We're going to bring it to the front of that. Okay. And then on the back of it, once I put this on, that third piece of cereal box will come in and go behind it. And you'll see all of this at the craft table. Okay, so let's move that aside. Now, this is just simply a piece of brown paper that I cut again on my paper slicer. And it's just going to make a little frame here for my actual focal piece. So we'll stick that over here. This focal piece here is Music Digipaper from Touched by a Butterfly. Now, I could not find them online anymore, so I'm thinking that maybe they have retired their business. But if someone knows different than that, please let me know in the comments below, and we'll try to find this paper so that if you want it, you can find it also. But I really think they've retired. Okay. So moving on, what I did with this is I used the paper and I typed out music, think it, feel it, play it. I used the Heffler font, which is up in your font right up here, and sized it appropriately, and then came over here and I flattened it. Okay, so you just select everything and flatten. All right. So then I brought in these tall grasses from Woodland Friends, this circle wreath right here, from pumpkin spice and everything nice. This berry branch wreath, which you really can't see. There we go. Now you can see it better. Berry branch wreath from Close to My Heart Market Flower. These feathers are from Bohemian Wedding. Aren't they fun? And I brought in music, actual oboe music, and scanned it. It had already been scanned into my computer. So I just brought it into Cricut Design Space and used that. Now, the star of the show, okay, is my treble clef with an oboe as part of it. Now, there are no oboes in Cricut Design Space, so I had to create my own oboe. If you are interested in seeing a video on creating your own die cuts in Cricut Design Space, let me know. I'd be happy to do 1 or 2 or more demonstrations of that because I have a great time doing that. I love creating my own die cuts. So if you want to know how I do it, let me know. I will tell you. Okay, one more thing about this. When I did this piece right here, you'll see that I have printed the word music, but I also cut the letters separately out of black cardstock just to make that pop off a little more. Okay, I think I covered everything I did in Cricut Design Space. I think we are ready now to head on over to the craft table, take a look at what I actually did print and cut, and put this together. I'll see you over there. Here we are at the craft table, and you can see some of the pieces that I'm going to be using, some things I've cut from Cricut Design Space. Here's the cereal box I told you about, a gold frame with some filler to make it pop up. So I'm going to start off just by putting those 2 pieces of cereal box together with a little bit of score tape and also some Fabri-Tac glue. Now I'm just gluing 2 big pieces together, and I will cut this then to 5 by 7. Now let's go back and take a look at some things we're going to use. I have my ribbon here. I have some embossing powder. I have the piece that I cut from Cricut Design Space. I have all my little wreath and feathers and all the little tall grasses. You can see my little word music is there. And there's my oboe, and I'm going to pull that and start with that piece actually. So we're going to speed things up a little bit, and I'm just going to take this background piece that I cut in white and I colored it black because it's a really thick piece of cardstock, much heavier than the black on top. And I have just adhered those together to make a nice sturdy die cut. Now I'm putting it in some embossing ink, and I'm just laying it in there and pressing it down, as you can see, trying to get it all covered. And now I'm going to come in with some black embossing powder and just sprinkle over the top and try to hit every bit of it. And this is going to give it a shiny black texture. And if you do this and you find you miss a spot, you can go back and redo this as many times as you like. And I've never had any problem doing that. So if you miss a spot or it's not as shiny as you like, just go back and redo it. Just lay it back down in your embossing ink and pour more powder on and reheat it, because you can do it as many times as you like. So here we are. We're going to finish this up, this little treble clef, and it's going to get nice and black and shiny. And I'm bringing my light over so you can see how shiny it gets. Isn't that fun? So we can move on now to the next thing, and we're going to do a little more embossing. Now, I don't know if you know that you can do this or not, so I'm going to show you. I am mixing some of that champagne powder with some white. And I did this a couple of times until I got just the color I liked. Now again, I'm going to press this wreath in, and and I'm going to use the same procedure I used before. But by mixing the two powders, I'm going to get some light and some dark spots in there, all right? So the powders don't bleed together when they melt. They stay separate, but it's a really fun effect and will lighten a dark color overall. So I think you'll be able to see it. You probably can see it there. There's a pretty good shot of it, actually. I'm bringing in the brown twig part of this wreath, and I'm just gluing it with my Zig two-way glue, and I'm going to put it underneath my stamp block so that it can dry and settle. All right, so now I'm bringing these pieces of cereal box in, and that was just a piece actually from a package that we got. It actually was not in this frame. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to figure out how much more padding do I need in there to make this work, since there's no glass. And later on I do add a little bit of foam. Okay, so here's some really pretty lace. And I got this lace for my daughter's wedding, and we ended up not using any of it. So I have quite a bit. So I cut it down, and now what I'm doing is I'm taking my cereal box, which was a 5x7 cut. Remember, we glued those two pieces together? Well, I cut it down to 5x7. And now I'm adding my Fabri-Tac over some score tape, and I'm putting a really rich brown. It has sort of a rosy brown, you know, that kind of pink brown. And I'm adding over the top my lace. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just fold it around, but first I'm going to remove a little bit more of this lace, and I'm going to miter my corners. Now mitering the corners simply means that you're going to cut them off at an angle next to the corners. It's a sewing term. So then I added my double score tape, and now I'm just bringing it around, and I'm not worrying too much about how that lace falls on the back. I'm not worried at all about it, in fact, because we're going to take that third piece of cereal box that we cut. We're going to glue it to the back of this, so it's not even going to show. Not like it was going to show in the frame anyway, but by adding this extra little piece of cereal box, we'll be able to get it in and out of the frame pretty easily. All right, so we're going to add a little Fabri-Tac, and we're just going to add that third piece of cereal box right down onto the back. I'm going to use my stamp block just to go over this and kind of give it a little bit of weight there and make sure I'm getting all of it glued in. And there it is. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because remember, it's going into that frame. All right, now we're going to add those little letters, and I like to do it using just a pair of regular tweezers, nothing fancy. And I'm just going to glue them right over where I printed it. Now, did I have to print it? Couldn't I have just cut the letters and glued them on? Sure, but this way I know they're going to go on straight, and they're going to be aligned in a nice, clean line. I'm not very good at lining up little letters, so this just makes it really easy for me. And adding the black on the top just gives it a little more oomph. It gives it a little bit more pop off of the piece. So that was my goal for doing this. One more little letter, and we will be moving on. Now, I did go through and ink all of these pieces. I inked the actual piece that you are looking at, and I also inked this wreath. Now, you can see my phone off to the right there. I just go over and I just shoot a picture of my computer screen, and then that helps me with placement. So if you're wondering, why does she have her phone over there and have pictures of this? I just take a picture and use it, and Then if I want to know about placement, I'm right there. I went ahead and inserted this all into the frame, and I did pop just a little bit of foam in there too, just to make it sit really nicely, nice and tight in there. And again, I'm going to go ahead and design this with it already in the frame, because I'm not going to be able to put all those tall grasses and everything in and then slide it in. I was afraid I would rip something or tear something. So I just went ahead and put it in the frame and just started assembling. I went ahead and put on my 2 wreaths and then started with my feathers. Now you'll see that I'm not gluing everything all the way down. I'm letting it just flow and move off the page. I'm not too worried about, at this point, how stuck they even are, because I know that I probably will move those tall grasses a little bit. And that's the nice thing about working with Fabri-Tac, is you have the ability to pick things up, move it, but then once it dries, it's good to go. I mean, it's not going anywhere. But you have time to wiggle things around and move them, which I have done. You can see those grasses are just a little different than what they were before. All right. Once we get this piece of tall grass in, we're going to move on to that little satin ribbon bow. And I'm going to show you how I tie a double bow. I go over, under, over, under. Then I bring the top that is underneath over all of the others. I'm going to do this again for you, okay? Over, under, over, under, over, up, and through. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I've got the 2 little tails. All I'm going to do is just tie them together. And you'll see here, I'm just going to slide that through and just tie a regular knot. And I'm only going to tie it 1 time. You can tie it twice if you want, but I'm only going to tie it 1 time, because that's going to give me a little bit of leeway. It's going to give me a little bit of play in it, because I'm going to take this ribbon, this bow, and I'm going to move those pieces around a little bit. And as I do that, you're going to see that one gets a little, the loops aren't exactly the same size, and they don't look quite as, just as perfect as they did. Okay, so now once I glue it in though, the glue, once the glue dries, is going to hold that in place. I'm bringing in some Gorilla Glue now, because I want to hold this metal piece on. Now this metal piece is sort of upcycled, like my frame. It's an old button cover. Remember those button covers from the 80s? Remember those? Okay, this is an old button cover. And I just tore it apart and then just attached just the floral part. So it's a big chunky piece of metal there. Added a little gem to the middle. Here comes my star of the show, my Oboe treble cloth. And I'm adding some 3D tape. I've cut it into little itty bitty pieces and put it on the back. And I'm just going to sort of scrunch it in here underneath the ribbon, but on top of the feathers. If you've seen very many of my videos, you know that when we come to the pearls and gems and those fun little bits, that we are coming to the end of the video. And again, that is true. We are approaching the end. Thank you so much for your time today, because I know this was a long video, and I really appreciate your time. I hope that I've inspired you in some way to try something new. Maybe it's using some old chunky jewelry on a piece. Maybe it's making a 3D home decor piece. Or maybe I've inspired you to make your own design cut. Again, if you'd like to see a video like that, just let me know in the comments below. I'll leave in the box below all of the goodies that you need to do a project like this, and I will catch up with you in the next video. Bye.